Clint, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know, um, as everybody says, this is really unprecedented time, and so we're trying to shift gears and get really some pertinent information out to people. And as most of our community knows, we had to postpone our small business series, and you were one of the main panelists that we were going to speak to, and really talk about some of the experiences that you've had on your business journey. And so,
Mhm.
just to give a brief introduction about your who you are for those of our community or those watching the video that don't know you, just a little bit about you, if I can kind of give you a brief or give our community a brief introduction. Um,
Sure.
so you hold a professional aeronautics degree from Embry-Riddle, um, and with a minor in business administration and navigation. And currently, you are a SCORE mentor. You also sit on the KEDC board, as well as the chamber board, and you were the founder of Kerrville's Hill Country Pitch Day.
Mhm.
So personally, you are married to Melissa and you have 4 children, which I'm sure is making it, like the rest of us, a little bit challenging to work through those in our remote work environment. Um, and like the majority of us, I feel like now in Kerrville, you came to live in Kerrville. This is not where you were born. You were actually born in Wichita Falls, which I didn't know. Kind of read up on you before this. And you were
Okay.
actually uh, born and raised on a farm. Is that right?
Well, our family business is a nursery business. So yeah, we have a farm, but it's really a bunch of greenhouses. We grow bedding plants and flowers and have a large nursery that's kind of halfway between Dallas and Oklahoma City and is a regional hub there. But yeah, we grew up in the plant business.
Very nice. So I love, as I was reading your background, I've had um, just a wonderful opportunity to come to you for lots of different advice and questions over the years. And I've grown very fond of you, your family, and obviously that business relationship and that advice that I've received. And I feel like every time we talk, I learn something new about you. And so reading your bio, having no idea that you have a little bit of that agriculture background as well as that aeronautic background, which I think is just so vital to specifically what we're doing with KEDC right now, which we won't get into, but I thought that was just fantastic. So thanks again for your time. And we're going to, as we kind of talked a little bit before this, I think we have, again, about 10 hours material, but we won't go in that deep or that length. So just a little bit about your SCORE mentorship, because I think that ties into a lot of the questions that I have for you. Can you talk a little bit about what you do with SCORE and how you mentor entrepreneurs?
Well, I am not currently a SCORE mentor, so I think that was maybe an inaccurate thing. But I have been mentored by SCORE when I first started, and I do a lot of consulting and mentorship with clients that we work with. So I think it's very applicable, and what we do is probably very similar. But I think SCORE is just starting to get into this community, and I'm really excited to see them coming here because we just hadn't had their presence in Kerrville. So that's very good. I have not met the SCORE San Antonio people that are coming to Kerrville yet. So that's its own thing. But what I find in when you talked about my background, I do think it's kind of funny because um, I'm not that old, but I've done a lot of things, and everything from working in the family nursery business to different sales and marketing jobs to working with high tech companies, low tech companies, manufacturing, and the hunting and outdoor industry. And now I do advisory work for mergers and acquisitions and business brokerage. And so in that industry, I'm constantly seeing under the hood of all kinds of different businesses. So in the last few years, we've done dozens of business transactions, and we've only done the same type of company once or twice. And so it seems like every day we're learning a new business model and learning about a new industry. And so what that means is I know a lot of different things, but at a more shallow level. So it's like I don't it's jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. But what I found is that business is pretty universal, and if you can take good care of people, and whether that's your customers, your vendors, your employees, and deliver good value, whether you have a product or service, and then just live on less than you make, which is kind of like basics of personal finance that a lot of us struggle with. But it definitely applies to business as well. Then you're going to be successful. And then it's just a matter of whatever business you choose or industry you choose, you have to learn the technical aspects of that particular field. But if you've got those basics of being a good people person and taking care of people and managing your finances well and being a good leader, then you can succeed in almost any industry and almost any environment. And regardless of what the macro is doing, and this is what I hope we spend a little bit of time on today, is this: we're going through this unprecedented pandemic and this response to it, which is, I mean, it's just crazy. I hope we're doing the right thing for everyone's health, but in terms of the business disruption that we're experiencing, I've never seen anything like this widespread and this disruptive to the business world. And that's kind of it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity at the same time, because we're kind of blessed as small business owners that when stuff happens, we can adapt and change much quicker. So we can move much more quickly than large companies and large institutions can. And so I think it's important to just kind of count your blessings as a small business, even though this hurts really bad, and it can be really challenging right now. There's going to be just the agility that we have to move, to zig and zag and roll with the punches and surf on the waves and think, whatever analogy you want to use, is really a blessing. And that's one of the things I hope to try to convey today, is just some stories and thoughts about just kind of doing that as a small business owner, which I think is really, really important at this time.
So aside from this time, I know you've had the opportunity to build some businesses. So you've had that in your history. So how have you done that in the past, outside of this pandemic? How have you had the opportunity to kind of pivot in a business to overcome some challenges?
Yeah, so I'm on my third business that I've helped start from scratch. And one of the big things, and so I've launched a few startups, and then I've helped other people. I've invested in some startups, and then I've, through the Hill Country Pitch Day, which is kind of the startup event for the Texas Hill Country, we get to mentor and talk through a lot of teams that are trying to raise money and do their startups. And one of the things, one of the big pieces of advice I like to make to pretty much anybody in any business is to make a plan, but don't marry your plan. So marry the vision and the goal of where you want to go, but be really, like, hold your plan with an open hand, and don't grip it so tightly that when things change, you're gonna die with your plan, And so basically a business plan is just a long set of assumptions that you've made. And if you're just real honest about it, you write your plan, and it's like the best laid plans of men. We write our plans, but we don't really know reality, how it's going to play out. And so the biggest thing I would encourage people to do is to write a detailed, thorough plan, and then write a lot of what ifs into it. So identify, what are all these assumptions that I'm making, and a business plan goes from A to Z, and it has this daisy chain of assumptions built in. And the sooner you can realize one of your assumptions was incorrect, the sooner you can shift and pivot. So I have a bunch of examples of this, but we had when we first started Nature Blinds, the deer hunting, deer blind manufacturing company here in Kerrville. We wanted to go to market with a small, really user-friendly, affordable, every man's blind that looks like a shield, just like $100 product.
Mhm.
$100, $200 product. And we just couldn't quite get it um, made cheaply enough to hit the price point we wanted to do that type of hunting, to do just a portable, take it with you everywhere you want to go product. But just kind of as a lark one day, I've got kids coming out. Would y'all stay inside? Stay inside, please. Um, it's the new world.
It
Yeah,
is.
my kids are awesome though. But anyways, like we couldn't quite get this thing, but just one day we decided to try a large format and make a big product, and just as like a prototype for something we wanted to do maybe 2 years into the future. And as soon as we saw that prototype, and our investor saw it, and it just, the light bulbs went off, and we're like, man, we're going about this all the wrong way. And we completely changed our business model to say, let's do a $4,000 product instead of a $100 product, and let's go after the very high end of the market
Mhm.
instead of the mass market. And it was just one of those things where when you're limited and capital constrained, you think, let's crawl before we can walk. It kind of makes sense. Let's start with a small one. It's less risky. But in reality, when you can only make so much and manufacture so much, it's actually probably better to start high end and then go mass market when you're a bigger thing and you can manufacture better at scale and using automation. But um, I was too dumb to know that when I was in my 20s starting that business, So I was just thinking risk and I was thinking the limits of capital says do the small thing first. But when you looked at, in retrospect, when I look at the way Tesla is going, for example, they didn't start with the Model 3, which they're trying to get into, kind of like the competitive sedan market. They started with the Roadsters and the S and the X and these other things that are competing with the luxury high end market, because you can really go after the high end where they're not as price sensitive and you have fewer customers, but that allows you to grow your brand and establish yourself. And it's easier to go down than it is to go up market. And that's why I think the Tesla strategy is smart, going high end and then going mass market. And I was trying to do it all opposite, and the world just kind of had to teach me a hard lesson there, that you're doing the wrong thing trying to go. But if I had just clutched to this plan and said, no, we have to do small first before we go big, and wasn't willing to just completely rip up that part of the plan, throw it out, and insert a new part of the plan, then we probably would have withered on the vine, and wouldn't have been able to really get to the market. And when we took this big product to market that was 7 feet tall and several $1,000s, yeah, we got a lot of haters, of people that were like, "Oh, I'll buy that when I can win the lottery," kind of response. But what did we get? It was a lot of attention. We got a ton of attention, and we were getting people from all over the industry just flocking to us saying, "Wow," because we had this eye-popping, really big, innovative, expensive thing, and we were trying to position it like a Ferrari instead of a Civic, or so
Yeah.
that's that ended up being kind of the key to our launch, and that got us a rapid nationwide exposure, and really opened the doors up at the high levels that then allowed us to go into the other markets later. So in normal times, yeah, and then here's another one is when I started Texas Business Buyers, um, I established, so that's our business brokerage. I had heard everyone tell me it's going to be at least a year before you're able to sell a company, because it just takes time. You got to get your reputation out there. It's a lot of hard work. These deals take a long time, and you need to do something to make some revenue, so you don't got a business your first year or two while you're waiting on closing your first deal. And so I took all this advice to heart, and I got all these certifications to become a business valuator and to become what's called a value builder consultant. And
Mhm.
that's someone that helps people grow their business's value prior to sell. And you can get paid kind of every month as a consultant, helping people work on their business and build their systems and processes that make up their business's value. And I was like, man, that's genius. I'll be able to get, small checks by doing business valuations for people and then doing business consulting. And then eventually I'll be able to work my way into doing business transactions and brokering multi-million dollar deals and things like that. And that was the path. That was my plan. Right. And so, and again, right, it's the same lesson. And it's almost like, wow, I just didn't realize that until just now. I just had to learn that lesson. It's kind of like the nature lines lesson. It was like logical, start small, build your way up, right? And I guess I didn't learn the nature blind one. I guess I didn't learn it
Well,
because
I think we all have examples of that in our lives in various forms where we think we've learned a lesson, but then it takes a couple of times where we go, geez, I'm here again. So yeah.
My former pastor used to say, like one of the cool things about God is when you fail his tests, he just lets you keep retaking it. So
Thanks, God.
So I got to retake that one. But yeah, it when I got into the marketplace, I set up the systems to be able to do brokerage deals, but I was just assuming, man, it's going to be a long time before anyone trusts me to let me have their baby, like sell and help them transition out of their business. And so I started advertising, hey, I'll do valuations, I'll do consulting. And I started to get some nibbles on that and started to get some little work. But I mean, I'm still, it's going to be a while before I'm even breaking even here. And one day I just decided, you know what? I know everything I need to know to do a deal. Just because I haven't done a deal doesn't mean I can't. Like I've studied this thing inside and out. I sold a business when I was in business as an entrepreneur, and so I've actually been through that process and been in their seat. I know I'm going to be able to at least speak from some experience, having been through it. And I got all these certifications and trainings, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to raise my hand and be brave. And everybody I knew that knew me got an email that said, hey, just so you know, and to take a deep breath, if you want help selling your business, I can help you do that. And sure enough, I just had a buddy that I guess it was a reputational I guess I just had relational equity is what I would call it, that he trusted me enough and said, wow, I need to move to Tennessee, and this email couldn't have been better. I need to sell my company right now. And I just know that you're going to get it done. And literally it was like the first week I raised my hand, I got an engagement to represent someone's company in the marketplace. And then by miracle of all miracles, again, it's like God and luck, and like kind of luck comes to the prepared. I was prepared for it, but it happened a lot faster than I thought. And the first deal I ever did was about 90 days from engaged to actually closed and transitioned to a new owner at almost the full asking price that we had on it. And that was the first time I saw, wow, I can get a check that's a lot bigger than doing paid by the hour consulting or valuation work if I can help someone actually do a transaction and start getting into mergers and acquisitions. And so that flipped my whole business model on its head again. And I was like, all right, let's go big first, and then we can still do the little stuff kind of to ease out the peaks and valleys. But once I had one rep under my belt, and it was fun because when you only have one, that's all you have to do is work on that deal all day long. And I just gave it my whole heart and soul and got it done. And then that led, the check I got from that, I was able to start hiring. I hired my first employee. And instead of just, buying something nice for myself or consuming the money, I reinvested it. And that's the other thing I think is important for business owners that are just getting going, is to like put yourself and your personal needs kind of last, and put your businesses first, and then you're going to be able to snowball your successes a lot better. And so two of the things I did with this company that really was beneficial was I again went to, okay, I'm going to master the bigger piece of this, the mergers and acquisitions part. and make that kind of the foundation, and these other things are going to be accessories, versus the accessories are going to be the foundation, and then we'll take a deal whenever it comes. And that switch is what kind of catapulted me to being able to grow a lot faster, was just kind of realizing like, yeah, like, and it really just took being brave and stopping the self-talk and self-doubt that says you can't do this, um, and just seeing if anyone will let you have your first chance. And then once we had that, we were off to the races. And so part of that switch also put a habit into place in my business that's serving me well right now. So 5 years later, we're in this pandemic, and it's tough. It's really tough to do deals right now. But as we've grown, we've started doing larger and larger deals, and larger deals take longer, and it's more feast or famine. You have longer gaps between transactions. And I knew just from my personal life, it was kind of like in previous jobs and careers I had as a salesperson. If you have a commission sales job, when you get a big commission, you better not spend it. You better save it so you can get through the valley to the next one. And so I kind of learned that at a personal level, and I started applying that same logic to my business. And where I do personally with cash is, I find that I get really nervous if I have less than 3 months of cash.
Mhm.
And so I look at money like in terms of not dollars, because the dollars don't really matter so much to me as much as the runway that the dollars create in terms of time. And so I always like to turn money into time to get a better handle on what I'm looking at with money, because money can deceive you. Um, you can see big dollars, but if you've got a big overhead and a big spend, those big dollars go away really fast.
Yeah.
So it's really important to translate. Um, and you can have small dollars, but if you've got a really lean and mean organization, those small dollars you can stretch a long way. So translate that checking account operating money that you have into time, and then you'll kind of know where you're at. And so for me, I generally don't take home um, any bonuses or extra pay or anything like that. So I pay myself like a livable salary.
Mhm.
But if I'm not at 6 months of cash in the operating account, then I'm not going to take home any discretionary um, distributions or anything like that as an owner. And if I get under 3, it's really starting to tighten the belt time, because that makes me nervous, because our revenue spikes into peaks and valleys. And my company is an extreme example of that, because it is one of the most roller coaster spiky revenue things. But even if I had a restaurant, which is the opposite of that, you're getting a little bit of money every day. Um, I'm still, just from my paranoia from being a commission salesperson and doing stuff that I've done, I'm still paranoid about running out of cash. Cash to a company is like blood. It's like oxygen. You need it every day to be able to pay your bills, pay your people, keep everything going, and not freak everybody out. And so, um, yours as an entrepreneur, I'm trying to speak to someone that would listen to this that's a small business owner.
Yeah.
Your threshold is going to be different than mine, but you need to have one. You need to have a minimum. And if I drop below 3 months, I stop paying myself. I like batten down the hatches. All discretionary spending slows to minimal, and I'm really doing everything I can to move the cash cycle forward to get into that safety range. There should be a band that's like, this is the minimum, and below that you're kind of in triage emergency mode, but you're doing as little for yourself as you can and as much to feed into the company as you can. And then you've got like a fat checking account level. And when you, and your goal should be to kind of manage your cash. You're always between these thresholds, or actually if you can push it higher than the top one, then you can make good money as the owner. But you're last. Your people are first. Your business is first, and you've got to manage that cash cycle, um, and stay within that threshold. And so I kind of had that discipline, um, and that muscle already, just from the ups and downs and the drama I've been through as an entrepreneur. And so when they announce, okay, we're shutting down the country for 2 weeks or now a month, like that sucks, but I don't have to start like looking around the room, who am I going to fire, like day one or week 2 or week 3. It lets me, if you have cash, a little bit of cushion, then you actually can survey the landscape. Um, Another point I wanted to make that I think is relevant to this time and to this conversation is that the people that are ultimately going to be the biggest winners and the biggest losers, because anytime there's a massive disruption like this, there are people that come out way ahead, and there are people that just get absolutely devastated. And I was trying to think of like some advice of what are some things that are kind of practical, for small business owners to be in that first category, right? You want to be one that actually comes out of this stronger and not one that gets wiped out. The biggest one I think is going to be controlling your fear response. The more fearful you are, the more you look at what's right in front of your face, and you can't see out. And the people that come out ahead are ones that don't get gripped in fear, hunker down, only think about today, tomorrow, the next day, but they're not thinking about 6 months, 12 months, 5 years from now. Those people are going to do the classic. They're going to do everything wrong. They're going to sell low and buy high. They're going to do everything wrong because the fear is driving their behavior. If you can lift your chin up, take some deep breaths, and I'm not even just saying that metaphorically, like literally lift your chin up, take some deep breaths, and like try to center yourself and work on your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health and well-being, and relax a little bit, look up and look farther ahead. You're going to make much, much better decisions. And so I'm really grateful. I mean, that's really hard. It's a daily battle to do that. I have to keep kind of reminding myself that, because I'm not very good at that naturally. My instincts are the first thing I want to do in the morning is grab my phone and start like looking at the news and the numbers and all those things, and that just generates this anxiety and fear. And all of a sudden you're reacting instead of being proactive. And I would really encourage you, if you're listening to this, to kind of break that cycle. Spend, I mean, literally like 2, 3, 4 hours in the morning of just having your phone plugged in. Don't even look at it yet. For me, it's like get some quiet time, work out. I do Christian walk stuff, just reading my Bible and trying to get perspective. And I've also been reading history, and history's books have been fantastic right now, because I'm reading stories about World War II and stuff, and it makes all of our problems we're facing right now seem really, really small, and it makes you less fearful when you realize, wow, a lot of people have been through way worse than whatever I'm going through, and it makes me feel more confident not doing fear-based behavior, and realizing that some of the people that went through the absolute worst came out really beautiful on the other side of tough situations. And so I would say, like, manage your cash, grab as much cash as you can. Cash is that life, oxygen, blood, whatever you want to call it, of the business, that will enable you to not have to think hour by hour and day by day, and allow you to look up practically, and then govern yourself and your heart, your mind, so that you can look further ahead. But on a practical level, some of the ways you can gather cash would be, like, I carry a line of credit and I never touch it. I transferred a big chunk of my credit line into my operating account, even though I didn't need to, just because in the back of my mind, again, I'm a little paranoid. I think in tough times, if banks are starting to say, oh man, all these businesses are about to go out of business, one of the things they can start doing to control their exposure is starting to pull everyone's lines of credit to reduce, because if they're thinking, man, these businesses are going out of business no matter what, well, they're going to grab and use up their entire credit line before they go out of business, and we're going to be left holding the bag. And me and a bunch of CEOs, I'm in a Christian CEO group called C12, and like a lot of us have talked about it, and it's a small price to pay to carry a little bit of interest carry, just to kind of beef up your operating account right now. And it protects it from being, again, I don't want to say, take everything I say with a grain of salt, make your own decisions. I'm not a financial advisor or banker or anything like that, but some of us CEOs are saying, man, it's probably a small price to pay a few $100 in interest to kind of really protect it from being pulled on you, and to have some extra cushion there. And then also really look into the government programs that are being rolled out that are offering assistance loans, forgivable loans. The Paycheck Protection Program is in full swing right now, so check with your bank if you're eligible for that. Pretty much every business is, and if you're not on that, you should probably get on that. And so there's things you can do banking wise, there's things you can do with the government programs and assistance programs, and then there's just practical things you can do in your business. I've seen things like restaurants selling gift certificates right now at a discount or something like that, just because it gets, what does that do? It pulls cash from tomorrow to today, and it starts to do that grab cash thing that will help you have some blood in the body and be able to breathe and look further down the road. I've got a friend that has a window blinds company, Cindy. Hi, if you're watching. They can't go to people's houses and install window coverings right now. She's a Hunter Douglas dealer. She's in San Antonio. They do a brisk business in San Antonio and Bernie at Blinds by Delight. Wonderful business person. And me and her were talking and came up with this plan to do basically a discount for people that will start the process now. And so they're doing FaceTime tours of people's houses and consults, and they're walking around people's houses, looking at all the rooms. They're doing estimates, and you can ballpark it just with a video call. You can't do the final. She can't actually finish the sale because those things have to be to within an 1/8 inch, and they have to put their own measurements on it, or else it can really mess up the order. And people's houses are, some of them, the windows are like this, they're at the top and at the bottom. So you have to have the pros come in and really cut and measure and do the right things, and they can't do that over FaceTime, but they can get people committed to the process. They can take their time and have a really good video consult. And then they're basically saying, if you can get an estimate in during the shutdown, then you're going to give you a discount on your final order. And then they can just slam dunk, finish the job as soon as they're able to get into those places. And they can even take deposits now on those orders, and that helps, again, suck cash from the future sales into today, and it helps you feel more confident coming out of this that there is going to be business there, because you've created your own backlog.
I think it's important to note, again, just like what you're talking about. So these businesses that are now severely impacted. So the non-essential, service-based businesses that absolutely cannot operate because of the social distancing, that, talking about that pivoting where they can sell those gift certificates, or they can get that cash in some way, types of deposits, or they can, do 50% now for gift certificates so that they get some kind of cash in, and then 50% when you come in at that later time, so they know that they're getting some cash at that later point. Those are definite ways that those businesses, specifically in our region, because we have a very high number of those service-based businesses, so nail salons, spas, barber shops, hair salons. So great information as far as how those businesses that are greatly affected can pivot and get that cash coming in right now.
So I think that's great stuff. I do think like pulling in cash, lifting your head up to start looking further than the next day and the next day, and start thinking 6 months from now, a year from now, where do I want to be, is good. And then when you get a vision for where you want to be further out, it's a good time to start laying some framework and foundation for that long-term vision right now. And I want to give you some examples of that. So um, I actually have two. Commercial real estate landlords are freaked out. I mean, they're just, for good reason. You know, like there are some of their best tenants are restaurants, retailers, and people that are just absolutely getting crushed right now. Um, and office space is another one that's like, um, we don't know what the long-term ramifications of this is going to be yet. There's a number of business owners, including large ones, but definitely a lot of small ones that are already saying we're going to reduce our office footprint because we've discovered we can still kind of work okay remotely. And some of these people that have been reluctant to join the remote work revolution are being forced to now, and they're kind of liking it. And they're saying, wow, this could have a real future. And
Yeah.
we may have to have half the office space in the future or no office space in the future. And a lot of people are having those decisions. And so commercial landlords are flipping out. They're freaked out. And if you've got a vision that does involve expanding your footprint, in not your day until today. Today, it's your day. And so don't be afraid right now. Don't be bunkered down right now. Be thinking, how can I expand my territory right now? And so I want to give you a couple examples. I've got a friend that has a medium-sized CPA firm. He's got 22 employees, and he's busting out the seams of his current office space. He's been looking for a new space to rent and has been having the hardest time finding something he can afford because he wants this like nice high-end presence. He wants everyone to be comfortable. He wants it to look great. You know, he wants it to just be a really big upgrade from where they're currently been out for the past 5 years, where everybody's feeling real cramped on top of each other. And so he's been looking at some really nice spaces, and that was before this stuff happened, right? And now they're all working remotely, trying to figure it out, and without even he hasn't even raised his hand and asked for anything, but he's had 3 different commercial realtors that represent landlords reach out to him, and they've offered. I'm just pulling from memory, but examples like one was 29 bucks and had no tenant improvement allowance, and they just came back with the first counter without him even asking at like 22 bucks a square foot.
Wow.
And they offered him a $90,000 tenant improvement allowance. So it was kind of like, well, I mean, that's a huge, like 30% reduction or something like that in your rent, and $90,000 to really do a high end build out for free that wasn't there a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so now he's got a real decision to make of, if I want to have a space when I come out of this, like, man, securing a deal right now would probably get me the dream place I've always wanted at a much more affordable price with the build out that's not going to have to come out of my own cash. And that was just the first of one offers. He's had 3 others come out to him. So he's now in all of a sudden an empowered position to negotiate his future, maybe for the next 10 years in this little bump of this pullback right now that could save him hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next 5 or 10 years. And so that's the kind of thing, if you're looking up beyond just who do I got to fire this second, and you're able to look up and out on the horizon, you might be able to set yourself up for long-term success right now.
So we've heard in some of our webinars and some of the things that we're talking about within the economic development arena about the possibility of this new available office space to be some of a solution for our workforce housing or attainable housing problem that we've seen across the nation now. So similar to what had come out of our downtown warehousing or those areas that were underutilized or not utilized at all that became loft apartments and such. So have you heard anything like that within your your arena as far as commercial developers thinking about repurposing office space for that type of development?
So I'm not a major expert in the commercial real estate space, but certainly this disruption is causing innovation at all levels, and so developers and landlords are going to have to. It's kind of innovate or die time um, when this whole world's turned up on its head, and that's the big question pretty much across the board that everyone's trying to figure out is what are the long term. We all know the short term pain
Hmm.
is just sucks and that we're all feeling the pinch, but what's the long-term behavioral changes that are going to come out on the other side of this? Because the Great Depression, I'm hoping we're not entering into a Great Depression type season. I'm hoping this is a pullback and that we're able to launch forward, but nobody really knows. um, but the Great Depression changed behavior for decades and decades and decades. And if you had a grandparent, for example, that went through the Great Depression, they just did stuff differently
Yeah.
than your parents did. They just weird little things, you're like, why are you saving cellophane, or just like that's weird. Just
Yeah.
throw that in the trash, grandma. But it's because, even in an era decades later where there's no shortages, that it's changed how they think and it's
Right.
changed their behavior. And so I do think that that's gonna it's gonna affect the psyches of how we do. I definitely think it's gonna make us rethink offices. I definitely think it's gonna make us rethink our financial management and the whole, like, in this booming economy where we've got just in time everything and Amazon delivers in 2 seconds anywhere you're at, and money is cheap and abundant to come by, you're kind of an idiot if you have an abundance of inventory or if you have an abundance of cash, because you could just be deploying that more efficiently in the just in time society. If you think happy times are here and they're always going to be here, then you don't play defense. You just are purely on offense. And what happens is when you're playing really aggressive offense and you don't have any cushion, bam, 2 weeks can just knock your legs out from under you and crush your business because you just assumed you're always going to have um, the ability to get anything in 2 seconds that you need. And when now all of a sudden the supply chain is getting disrupted, stuff's getting priorities, whole, you might have had a vendor for something that you sell that their factory is getting completely retooled to make masks right now or something where you needed that and you were used to being able to click a button and you get a whole shipment tomorrow. And so you don't bother to stack any up on pallets, right? Because that would be dumb. It's just tying up capital.
Right.
But now we're gonna have to rethink a lot of this stuff. So I think it's really going to affect our supply chain management. I think it's going to affect our cash management, our inventory management, and really help people build more robust and really think through more of the what if things. Kind of like I have to with mine just because of the craziness of my cash cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are going to come out stronger because they're going to build those redundancies into their businesses now from the get-go, because this is going to mess with your head and stuff that we never. Teresa, if you and I were sitting together a month ago,
Yep.
we wouldn't be talking about any of this stuff. Like
we didn't. We were together 2 months ago talking about our 40 under 40 event and talking about the small business series and all of these wonderful events that we were planning and all of these things. And it's just like the business plan, right? You have this plan for 6, 8, 9 months out, and guess what? Now we have to pivot. So and I think we've done that. We're trying our best to get information out in a proper and appropriate manner for people still. But who would have guessed that this is what we would be talking about as far as how we can help businesses in this way, and what the new horizon is going to look like for us, and what it's comparing to for the Great Depression. No, I never would have in a million years guessed this. Nope.
Yeah, that guy talking at the economic summit, he
Yeah,
didn't he didn't he didn't prepare us for any of this. You know, we kind of laughed about the corona. It was already on the it was already being talked about, but it was still kind of brushed off
yeah.
as
I've
early as
talked to several
February.
people. I've talked to several people, and I said, I went on vacation in February, and I was one of the ones
Hmm.
still in February that was saying, everybody's making too much of this, and I was one of the first ones that was saying,
Hmm.
this is not a big deal. And wow, shame on me for at the very beginning
Yeah.
thinking that. And so, yeah, well, that's history.
Hmm. Yep. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think if I have some other. I have one other story that's kind of developing right now. That's kind of a neat one. One of the things I'm doing today is I'm reviewing a lease that I've helped a friend that owns a restaurant negotiate, and this is another one of those larger territory moments. And so um, I can't divulge any information that would identify either of these two parties, but I've got one person that's got a well-known establishment that's got a restaurant, and he's been thinking about selling for years. He calls me every year and is like, you know what, Clint, I think I'm going to sell. And I'm always excited because I love this place. It's a moneymaker. It's a great, well-known place. And I'm like, sweet, it's going to be your year. It's going to be your year. And then he backs off and is like, you know what, we'll go just a little bit further. And then he had called me in January and he was serious. He was just like, you know what, I need to get out, but I've decided I want to keep the real estate and I want to be the landlord and I want to find someone who can just take over um, running my business. And it was a substantial operation. So it's a pretty good sized operation. And and so what he wants to do is basically find someone to lease, do a triple net lease and lease the place. But it's got an established customer base and it's got established cash flow.
Mhm.
Um, but he's more interested in just turning it into a passive income stream for him, so he doesn't have to run the business.
Right.
And and so um, because we're in this all, his business is shut down like everyone else's right now. We had a party that has another that's a good operator that I know that was already talking to him before this stuff hit. They had become friends and started kind of, how can we put my concept into your space and kind of marry these things. And because of the crunch it put on the potential tenant, because his place is currently shut down too,
Yep.
cash is thin, and I've been kind of being intermediary between the two. I'm like, guys, I know this sucks, but it sucks for you and it sucks for you. Like it equally sucks right now. Um, Nobody can get, like, you don't have the cash to come in here with the war chest you want as the new operator, and then you don't, and so we're just trying to figure out how can we make this work, and we've ended up negotiating a deal that I think is going to be great, where uh, the operator is going to be able to take over during, so like this month of April, while everything's shut down, we're going to be able to like totally remodel and really have a new concept come into a space,
Nice.
without having to even disrupt cash flow at all. So it's like the best time ever to do this. And the owner that wants to turn it into passive income, he's kind of given my uh, my friend that's coming in like kind of the world, like he's able to he's floating the cost for the build out, and he's kind of baking that into the rent. And then we've been able to negotiate the rent, so instead of just where a landlord previously says it's this much a month, pay me or I kick you out and someone else comes in here tomorrow.
Right.
They're not able to do that right now. Like, landlords just can't do that right now. We have to say, hey, what if this continues through the summer? What if our customers aren't coming back out of hibernation, for a few more months because of the fear that's set in this market? And so we were able to establish some kind of floating rent where, if COVID keeps going out, we're gonna have a temporary agreement that will be basically just covering the cost of this place. And then we're able to negotiate, hey, in peak season, we're going to have pay more. And when it's lower, we're going to pay less. And we're able to negotiate in a lot of the costs. And then the owner's financing the inventory into the deal so that the new operator is going to be able to come in fully stocked without having to pull cash into that place. And overall, the tenant that's coming in is probably going to be able to triple his business for very little cash out of pocket. And it's going to be a win for that landlord too, because he's going to get somebody that's a reliable, good operator that turns his asset into passive income for him. But everybody had to give and take, and everybody had to just accept reality. This is a crazy time to do a deal, but there's deals to be done. And if my operator friend that's moving into that was just so freaked out, head down, trying to lay off people and navigate this, he would have never been able to do this opportunity. And I think he's going to come out with a business that's tripled or quadrupled in size with terms that we would have never been able to get. And so I guess it's the same point I was making about my CPA friend. It's like those that win and those that enlarge their territory or expand are going to be the ones that are the least afraid. And so build your cash, build your faith, build your mind up, and then start look for those opportunities because they are out there, and there's ways you can get win-win deals done even in the midst of this craziness.
Well, I love that you just brought in one of your 4 core values. And so I would like to encourage anybody out there that needs some of that insight or some of that motivation to look at your 4 core values on your website. In just the time that I've known you, it's one of the things I did talk about at the Economic Summit is that I pull a lot of my positivity and inspiration from the people that I get to talk to on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And just having the opportunity to talk to you today and connect with you has been a real pleasure. And I really appreciate all of the insight that you've brought. And, there's opportunities for people to be able to pull that motivation from your LinkedIn page, from your website. You just put out a lot of wonderful information, and I really appreciate that. Thank you for the insight into your personal ways that you've been coping with this. I do think it's important during this time for us to take the time to pause even in our personal time and reflect and stay healthy in the ways that we can, and definitely focusing on the things that we can control, and keeping our heads up and looking into the future. So Clint, I really appreciate it. And if you have any last thoughts, feel free to share. But thanks for being my first interview. This will be first for KUDC, and I can't think of a better person to have shared that time with.
No, I just want to say thank you to you. I'm really proud of you and Gil and the EDC and how everybody's responding to this. And it just shows the character of you and your willingness to just pivot yourself and do whatever you can to help and share good information and just be a supporter of our community. So my hat's off to you. I really appreciate you. I thank you for giving me the time to visit with you this morning. It's been a pleasure. So keep up the good work. And my parting thoughts would just be, don't be afraid, be filled with faith, and look for those opportunities. And we're going to come out of this okay. And we're going to come out of this stronger. But just don't do anything dumb right now. Just I guess just don't freak out and do stupid stuff. Look up and do smart stuff and tighten the belt, and you'll come out of this thing all right. So that's my encouragement.
Thank you, Clint. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Teresa.